I've worn the collar for over 30 years. I've baptized newborns, buried the dead, stood beside the broken, and prayed with the damned. But nothing, not the seminary, not the years of scripture, not even exorcism training, could prepare me for what I saw in the winter of 2004. That night, I learned the devil doesn't always show up with horns and fire. Sometimes he hides behind a locked door and waits. It began with a phone call at 11:17 p.m. The parish line never rang that late. I remember staring at the blinking red light like it was a warning. When I finally picked up, a woman's voice, shaky, tear-soaked, whispered, "Father, please. He's come back." Her name was Rosa Delgado, a widow who lived alone at the edge of town. She rarely came to church, but when she did, she lit candles for her late husband and left without saying a word. I asked, "Who's come back, Rosa?" No answer, just breathing. Then she hung up. I grabbed my coat, a flask of holy water, and the old crucifix from the back chapel. The roads were slick with ice, the kind of cold that gnaws through your bones. Her house sat surrounded by trees, half swallowed by shadows, its porch light blinking like it was struggling to stay alive. When I knocked, the door opened on its own. The smell hit me first. Rotting wood, wet stone, and something fouler underneath. The lights were off. I stepped inside, calling her name. Silence. Then I heard it. A dragging sound upstairs. Heavy. Slow. I followed it. The stairs creaked under my weight. At the top, the hallway stretched ahead like a tunnel, the air colder with every step. I turned right, toward the master bedroom, and that's when I heard whispering. Not Rosa. Multiple voices. Speaking in a tongue I didn't recognize, but my body understood it. Every syllable made my skin crawl. I opened the door. The room was dark, except for one flickering candle on the floor, and Rosa, kneeling in the corner, facing the wall. Her back was rigid. Her hair, soaked with sweat, clung to her neck. She didn't move when I called her name. I stepped closer. The candle's flame bent toward her as if drawn to her body. Then I saw her hand. It wasn't hers. Long fingers, joints too high, skin blackened like burnt paper. Something was holding her shoulder, but nothing was behind her. I raised the crucifix. In the name of the Father. Rosa's body snapped backward, her spine bending unnaturally until her head was nearly upside down. Her eyes were wide. Her mouth moved, but her voice wasn't hers. It was deep, distant, like it was echoing from inside a cave. She let me in. My knees weakened, but I stood firm. I sprinkled the holy water. "I command you to leave this woman." She smiled. Then her body lifted 2 feet off the ground. Not floated, yanked like by invisible ropes. She slammed into the ceiling, then the wall, then the floor, over and over. I dropped to my knees, praying aloud, my voice cracking with fear. Then, silence. Her body collapsed in a heap. I crawled to her. Her breathing was shallow, but her eyes met mine. And she whispered one word. Basement. I didn't want to go. Every instinct told me to run, but I'd already seen too much to walk away. I went down. The basement door groaned open. The stairs were narrow. The light switch didn't work. I used the flashlight on my keychain to guide me. Halfway down, I saw something move. Not across the floor. On the ceiling. It skittered like a spider. Fast. Too fast. A blur of limbs and something white. Teeth? Eyes? I reached the bottom. The room was empty, except for a circle of salt, broken at one edge. In the center, a small wooden box. Carved symbols. Something old. Wrong. I stepped into the circle. The air shifted. Warped. My ears popped, like on an airplane. I opened the box. Inside was a bundle of old hair, 2 teeth, and a slip of paper with words written in red ink. Latin. A curse. That's when I understood. Rosa had tried to trap it. A ritual. Maybe to speak to her dead husband, or to ask forgiveness. But something else answered. Something that pretended to be him. I put the box in my coat and ran upstairs. Rosa was gone. Gone. No blood. No sound. No trace. Just the candle, still burning. And the air, warmer now. Like something had left, but not far. I never saw her again. I still carry that box in a locked drawer at the church. I've had priests from other dioceses examine it. Some won't touch it. One got violently ill when he opened it. He said, "This isn't witchcraft. It's older." I don't know what Rosa saw. I only know I saw something that should not exist. And that was just the first time. If you felt something watching you during the story, you're not alone. Strange things tend to happen after people hear these tales. So before your lights flicker or your screen goes dark, like, comment and share it. So you're not the only one haunted. And whatever you do, subscribe before midnight. Because they always notice the quiet ones. There was a girl brought to my church by her family late one Sunday afternoon. They were immigrants, Haitian, I believe, and deeply spiritual people. They didn't speak much English, but the mother was in tears, and the father looked like a man who had already given up. The girl's name was Elsie, maybe 9 or 10 years old. Big eyes, skinny limbs. She looked empty, like someone had pulled the soul out of her and left the body standing. They believed she was possessed. I don't throw that word around lightly. I've worked in the deliverance ministry before, but real possession cases are rare. Most are just mental health struggles, trauma. But this felt different. Elsie hadn't spoken in 3 days. Not a word. Not even a blink, they said. But when they brought her into the small prayer room behind the sanctuary, her head suddenly turned, slow and steady, and she looked straight at the crucifix on the wall, and laughed. It wasn't a child's laugh. It was deep, raspy, mocking, like someone twice her age and 3 times her size. I started praying. I anointed her forehead with oil. Her parents knelt on the floor, crying and chanting in their own language. And that's when the air got heavy. Not warm, not cold, just thick. Like something invisible had entered the room and was watching from the corner. I kept praying, repeating the same psalm over and over, and then she rose. I mean it literally. Her feet left the ground. Her back was straight, arms out like a scarecrow, floating, 2 feet in the air. Her dress dangled like there was wind blowing it upward, but there was no wind, just silence, and the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Her eyes rolled back until only the white showed. Then she spoke. Again, not her voice. I am not leaving. She is mine. That's all she said. Then she dropped to the floor like a puppet with cut strings. She hit the ground hard, but didn't cry. Didn't scream. Just stared at me with those dead eyes. I don't know what gave me the strength, but I walked over, placed my hand on her head, and told whatever it was that it had no place here, that it had no authority over this child. She let out a shriek so loud it rang in my ears for days after. But then, it was over. Her mother rushed to her. The girl blinked like she was waking up from a nap. She didn't remember anything. They took her home. A week later, they moved out of the city. I never saw them again. But sometimes, when I walk into that same prayer room late at night, I still feel the air get thick, like whatever was in her never really left. It happened in winter, coldest February I can remember. I got a call around 11 p.m. A hospice nurse, someone I vaguely knew from the hospital, asked if I could come give last rites. Nothing unusual. Happens often in my line of work, but she sounded off. Her voice was shaking. She said the family was strange. They insisted the rites be done immediately and privately. No lights, no outsiders, just me. I hesitated, but something in me said go. I arrived at a rundown home on the outskirts of town. Looked abandoned, no porch light, no cars. But as I knocked, the door creaked open like they were waiting. Inside, it was pitch black. The only light came from a few tall candles placed in a circle on the floor. In the middle of that circle was the body of an old woman, wrapped in sheets, laid on a wooden table. The family was there, but none of them spoke. 5 people, all in black. Standing perfectly still, heads lowered. The air smelled like burnt herbs and something rotting. I tried to break the silence, asked who she was. No one answered. I asked if they'd like to pray. Still nothing. I decided to begin the rite anyway. I opened my Bible and began the prayer for the dying. But the moment I said, "May the Lord bless you and keep you," every candle in the room flickered violently, then snuffed out. The room went completely dark, and that's when I heard it. A voice, not a scream, not a whisper, a chant from every corner of the room, low, rhythmic, like a language I didn't recognize. I turned, trying to find the door, but it felt like the house had changed shape. No exit, no light, just the chanting. Louder now, almost frantic. Then, a thud. The sound of something heavy hitting the wooden floor. I turned back. The body was gone. The table was empty. But the sheet she was wrapped in was now folded neatly where she had been. The chanting stopped. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I just ran, arms stretched out in the dark until I felt the front door. I flung it open and stumbled outside, gasping in the freezing air. The house behind me, dark again, silent. I came back the next morning with the police. They found the house exactly as I left it, except there was no body there. No candles, no table, no people. Just a folded sheet on the floor. I was transferred to an old rural parish in the Northern Highlands. It was the kind of place where time moved slowly, where fog clung to the trees for days, and where the locals didn't talk much. The church was ancient, built from dark stone, with cracked pews and a steeple that leaned ever so slightly, as if weighed down by something unseen. The rectory where I stayed was attached to the chapel, small, musty, and bitterly cold. I wasn't expecting comfort, but I wasn't expecting what I found there either. On my first night, I heard what I thought was wind moving through the stone walls. It wasn't a steady gust, though. It came in short, labored bursts, almost like breathing. At first, I dismissed it. Old buildings have their own strange symphony, especially at night. But the sound didn't fade. It came again the next night, and the one after, always around 3 a.m. Always from the same wall, the one beside my bed. I tried to convince myself it was just pipes or rodents, something easily explained. But when I knocked on the wall, it felt hollow, like there was something behind it. The pattern of the sound was also too human. Shallow, dry, ragged inhalations, followed by a pause, and then a slow, shaky exhale. It reminded me of someone trying to stay quiet while crying. As the nights passed, the sounds became more aggressive. I'd hear scraping, like nails or fingertips dragging across wood. It grew louder each time, closer, more deliberate. One night, I heard a soft thud behind the wall, as if someone had collapsed on the other side of it. That was the moment my nerves truly began to fray. I couldn't sleep. I started keeping the lights on. I prayed more than I ever had, not for guidance, but for protection. Eventually, I asked the groundskeeper about the history of the rectory. He was hesitant at first, but then told me there had been a renovation decades ago. The rectory wall had once opened into a tiny corridor that led to a sealed-off space, a room that had been bricked shut during structural repairs. According to him, no one had opened it since. No one wanted to. That night, I stood in front of the wall again. I placed my hand against the cold stone and listened. The breathing was back, heavier, faster now. My fingers tingled as I pressed harder, feeling the subtle vibration beneath the surface. I didn't know if I was imagining it, but I was certain something, or someone, was moving just inches from where I stood. There was a presence there, a soul, and it didn't want to be alone. I began researching the church's records. What I found chilled me. In the late 1800s, a young priest assigned to this very parish had vanished without a trace. He had arrived full of optimism, wrote regularly in his journal, and then one day, he simply disappeared. No funeral, no explanation. The records ended abruptly. Some believed he had lost his faith and left in shame. Others whispered darker theories. There were even rumors of mental illness, of a man raving about voices and shadows, about things behind walls that didn't want to be forgotten. The deeper I dug, the more I began to believe those stories were more than just superstition. The noises were growing louder now. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, hearing muffled sobs, scratching, even whispers I couldn't understand. The wall would be ice cold to the touch. Once, I awoke with a bruise on my shoulder, right where I leaned against the wall when I slept. I hadn't rolled out of bed. I hadn't hid anything. But the skin was discolored and sore, like someone had gripped me from the other side. One evening, during a particularly bad storm, I felt a presence stronger than ever before. The entire room seemed to pulse with dread. The lights flickered, my breath fogged in the air, and then the wall began to bleed. Not in torrents, not enough to flood the room, but thin lines, almost like sweat, trickled from the seams in the stone. Deep red. I touched it. It was warm. I backed away, terrified, clutching my crucifix with shaking hands. My prayers felt hollow in that moment, like they bounced off something far too old and far too angry to care. The next day, I called the diocese. I asked to be reassigned, citing health concerns. They didn't question me. I packed my bags and left within the week. But before I did, I went to the wall one last time. I placed my palm against it. The surface was silent, still, cold. But as I turned to leave, I heard a single breath, shaky, mournful, and a final tap from within. Not desperate, not angry, just resigned. It was as if the thing inside knew I was leaving, and it was still waiting for the next priest, or perhaps for someone who would stay long enough to open the wall. Since then, I've never returned, but the dreams haven't stopped. Sometimes I wake up in a cold sweat, convinced I can still hear the breathing. Sometimes I see him just for a flash in the corner of a dream. A gaunt figure in priest's robes, pressed against the inside of a wall, eyes wide, mouth open, and a silent scream, unable to move. And I wonder every single time, was that him? Or was that what I was supposed to become?